Today I've got something really special for the Igor Nation. We've got a single opening variation that annihilates both the French defense as well as the Sicilian defense, and moreover, against the French defense, in the main line, in the most played line, you win the game from here in 10 moves by checkmating your opponent by your bishop. Here is the Lichess database, and here's exactly how you win against most played moves by black. Now, black commonly plays pawn d5, we push the pawn forward. Then they want to grab the center, so they play c5. But then you turn it into the Wing Gambit by going pawn to b4. And they take this pawn because why not? Then you play d4, grabbing the center. Their top choice right here is knight to c6. We play a3. I'll explain all these moves in a second. For now, let me just share with you the main line. Now a3, they accept this, and then you play c3, solidifying your pawn chain, also taking away all these squares so that it's harder for your opponent to develop his bishop. Now he goes bishop d7, and then you continue with bishop d3, putting your bishop to this active diagonal. Now, your opponent sees that if he tries developing a bishop or a knight, that may actually help you to pick up this pawn and put some pressure, or they're going to lose time for moving the same piece twice. So they play this awaiting move pawn a6, that's the main line. And what I recommend you to do here is to rush into the attack with the move knight to g5, which puts pressure down here. But also, generally speaking, you possibly can throw the queen out on the next move to f3 or h5 and also intensify your attack. Therefore, black tries playing h6 to remove this pawn from danger and also hopefully kicking your knight back. But you don't do this. Instead, you play knight takes f7 with this fork, which forces black to recapture it, and then you follow up with queen h5 check to the king. The only square where it could possibly go to is king to e7. Notice that g6 is not an option because we've got a queen and bishop here. So he has to play here, and that's when you finish the game in style with bishop takes a3. And as you can see, we're following down the most played line of black. Therefore, you have really high chances of reaching this position, which is cool, because not always you can checkmate your opponent by your bishop. Here's how you get to the very similar position against the Sicilian defense. Now, we start off with this b4 Wing Gambit right away. After he accepts it, we then play pawn a3, and after black takes it, we play pawn d4. Now, yes, we sacrifice the pawn, because, obviously we're going to get this pawn back in one of the following moves, so we're down one pawn, basically. Now, what are the advantages of our position? Well, obviously, you've got this strong center that controls a whole lot of squares right here. This also makes it harder for black to develop easily, because if they try to move forward one of their knights, you'll instantly play e5 and start chasing it away. So if he keeps going here, you can keep chasing the knight and gain more temples for your development. That's why the most played move by black here is pawn e6. They want to gain some space in the center of the board, plus they want to open up the bishop so that, somehow it guards this pawn, although not really. Now, after that, you play pawn c3 to completing your pawn chain, and after he goes d5, we then play e5. And as you can see, the pawn structure is really that of the French defense. And after knight to c6, we reach the point which is very similar to the previous line, which arises from the French defense. Now, there's one subtle difference. We haven't developed our knight to f3 yet. Like, if you play knight f3 right here, you'll reach exactly the position we talked about previously. However, I would actually recommend that you take advantage of this fact that your knight is not there yet, and you play another line, which is even stronger. Now, the nice thing about not having your knight on f3 yet is that in some lines, this knight obstructs your queen from moving forward into that direction and attacking your opponent. So not having your knight has certain advantages. Now, with that being said, I recommend that you play the move knight takes a3, which is a useful move. You take back your pawn. Plus, your knight from here sometimes can jump right there onto d6, and if you can land it right there, that's going to be phenomenal. Now, right now, his bishop controls the square, but, it may change in the future, and then this maneuver of your knight will be completely devastating for your opponent. Therefore, we have this idea at our disposal anytime we want to. Plus, another advantage of the system is that although you're down a pawn, but this extra pawn a7 does not really matter at this point. And it's not going to matter for the next, 30 moves. Only if you ever reach an endgame position, this extra pawn will matter. But right now, it doesn't. But you've got a lot of advantages for this little pawn. You have more space. Now, your opponent has somewhat cramped position. He still has got to figure out how to untangle it and how to develop his pieces. And you have very nice diagonals for your pieces. You can put your bishop right here. This bishop is also very active. You can put your queen out there and attack something. Therefore, you have lots of ideas for quick, hasty attack. Now, but right now, black's got to figure out how to develop these pieces. Now, if he develops the bishop right here, because that's the only square available, then after that, this knight is running out of squares. It can't go here because of your pawn. If it ever goes here, you can always trade it off and ruin his pawn structure. After that, it's going to be difficult to castle, therefore they usually don't feel comfortable doing that. So developing a bishop has some drawbacks, because after that, they can't bring out the knight. That's why usually they start off by developing the knight first, and their plan is to play knight f5 and then bishop e7 and to castle. That's what they hope for, but as always, we're not going to let them have that easy life. Now, we're going to stop this move knight f5 by pinning the knight to the queen, going bishop g5. And it's a very tricky position. Right now, black is already on the brink of disaster, because after virtually any move of black, let's say h6, which is the most natural move that most of your opponents will play, trying to get rid of this bishop and continue with their plan, going knight f5 later, you then ignore it, and you just go knight b5, and you win the game. Now, remember we talked about this idea to land our knight on this outpost square, and from there to attack everything in his position, and most importantly the king. But the problem for black is they can't stop it. This knight is pinned, so they can't move it and control the square that way, because that would drop the queen. So they can't do it, which means that they're just defenseless against this knight d6 check. So let's say they bite the bullet and take your bishop, then you go knight d6 check. The only way for the king to move is king to d7, but now we continue with knight takes f7, grabbing a pawn, and also forking the queen and rook. So we win a pawn right here, and on the next move we win the rook right here. Now we are up material, plus this king is centralized and exposed. Yes, our knight is on the edge, and it's a little bit of a drawback. However, it's not easy for black to get to our knight, because you can play h4, bring your rook into play along the h-file and support your knight. Therefore, you're up material, you attack the king, and for black, it's going to be difficult to do something. I mean, basically, you're having a winning position right here. On a side note, I just thought about one thing. Since in the main line against the French defense, we forced your opponent into this position, should we call it a Kinberger variation? Now, whatever it is, of course, you have a high likelihood of getting your opponent quickly in one of those traps. However, what if your opponent somehow manages to escape and to complete his development? How do you build up your attack then? Let me show you exactly how you do that. Alright, now, I understand that it's not easy to remember everything, and in this position against the Sicilian defense, if you remember, we talked about playing bishop g5, first spinning the knight, and then jumping with your knight forward to b5 and then to d6, winning the game that way. However, let's say you messed up something, or your opponent played some other moves and you couldn't get to this position. So let's say you played bishop d3 and your opponent managed to complete his plan, playing knight f5. What do you do then? Well, then you can't win quickly with a trap, so you have to develop normally. So you play knight f3, your opponent goes bishop e7, and in this game white played knight b5. Maybe not the best move, but still a good move to play. Now, it's actually a quite tricky move, because ideally speaking, you want to land your knight right here and attack the king. But of course, right now your opponent controls this square twice, so it feels completely impossible for you to do that. But it's actually much more real, because you can go bishop a3 and trade off this bishop. Once you did that, there will be only one defender, this knight on f5, and you can easily trade it off by this bishop. And as soon as you do that, your knight is ready to jump right there on d6, to stay there forever, and to always harass your opponent. Therefore, knight b5 actually puts some pressure onto your opponent. Plus, he can't push it away easily right away, because if he goes a6, then this pawn is still pinned to the rook. Therefore, it's not actually a threat right now. Anyway, let's come back to the game. In the game after knight b5, black simply castled. And this position feels very solid and safe for black. Looks like they outsmarted you. You're a pawn down, and there's nothing you can do. But there is a clear way for you to win the game, actually, right here. Now, if your opponent has the knight right here, there is always this move g4, where you can expand on the king side and continue your attack. Similarly, if this knight would be on g6 instead of f5, then you'd be able to push your h-pawn forward, like this way, h4, h5, so if the knight is back there on g6. Therefore, there is always a way for you to expand on the king side and to attack there. Now, we attack the knight. It doesn't have many squares to go to. Going back to h6 is always dangerous, because you've got your bishop right there. So if he goes forward, that looks like a much better option, but after the exchange, there is this key move pawn g5 that cuts the bishop off, and then you plan to go queen h5 or queen g4 and just capture the bishop on the next move. However, black feels to himself, well, I can just grab this bishop, my opponent keeps blundering. But you've got like a clear attacking plan here in mind. Yes, you can't win the bishop because it's guarded by the queen, but instead you play queen h5. That was the reason for this pawn sacrifice. Besides the fact that in the starting position you have too many pawns, so due to the inflation, their value goes down. You want to get rid of them anyway. Maybe you can come up with a more meaningful explanation. Anyway, from here, you've got this double attack. So queen takes h7 would be a checkmate, because we've got this bishop right here. But also queen takes g5 is a threat, because we also attack it twice. Therefore, the only move for them to stay in the game would be pawn h6. And now indeed you can't win the game like on the spot, but in fact you've got a totally winning position. Because you play rook g1, putting your rook against his king, plus attacking the bishop. And after this exchange, currently you're down 2 pawns, but you have a totally overwhelming position. You've got these 3 powerful pieces against this lonely undefended king. You've got this open file, plus queen takes h6 is coming because of this pin. Your knight is ready to jump on d6 and to also be very annoying, controlling a whole lot of squares from that position, and dominating over your opponent. Therefore, you have so much at your disposal that for black it's really difficult to survive here. And in fact, it's just impossible. Now, the immediate threat is queen takes h6, taking advantage of the pin. Therefore, they have to do something like this to prevent this. But then you can attack in different ways. One of them would be to move your king. And this mysterious move, in fact, prepares something really powerful after your opponent does whatever, doesn't matter, a6 or anything else, any move, doesn't matter. You then have this rook sacrifice, rook takes, completely opening up the king. Then you can continue with rook to g1 check. The king has to go, or bishop takes away this square, and then you play queen h6 checkmate. So that's one of the really common attacking patterns against this variation. Here's a puzzle of the day. It is white to play mate in 2. Magnus Carlsen solved this position in 1 minute and 40 seconds, which means that you've got a realistic chance to outperform the world champ. So try to solve it and let me know how long did it take you. Speaking about the Wing Gambit that we've discussed today, I already anticipate that somebody will write in comments like, Igor, it's all cool when you show it, but I tried to play it and my opponent played some other move and I lost badly. Now, let me clarify that I never encourage people to memorize openings, and generally speaking, learning openings is not the best way to progress in chess because chess is actually a strategic game. So if you really want to advance your chess skills, I'd recommend that you check out my course Level Up Your Chess, where I put together all the crucial components that you need in order to get to the next level in chess, right? So it's how to play openings, middle games, end games, how to study chess, and exactly how to think while playing games so that you can find proper moves on your own. I even recorded for the first time my own live games where I explained exactly how I find every move that I play so that you can easily see how it works in reality and you can replicate this process yourself. So if you're curious to know this, you can get it by clicking the link below the video in the description. Of course, feel free to let me know if you have any questions about the opening or anything else, and I'll do my best to follow up. Have a great rest of the day.